In 1957, Jayne Mansfield showed up at a fancy Hollywood party wearing a dress so low-cut that cameras caught everything the pictures were too hot for newspapers. Later, she made headlines by wearing a bikini that accidentally fell off during a publicity stunt, but these weren't mistakes. They were calculated moves by a publicity genius. Now, 55 years after her tragic death, we're revealing the shocking truth about the bombshell who made Marilyn Monroe look tame. Jayne Mansfield was born Vera Jane Palmer on April 19, 1933 in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Her father, Herbert Palmer, was an attorney and musician. Her mother, Vera Jeffrey Palmer, had been a schoolteacher. Life seemed stable until tragedy struck in 1936 while driving the family home. Herbert suffered a fatal heart attack. Jayne was only 3 years old later. She would say that something inside her changed that day. Her mother remarried in 1939. Harry Pierce, a sales engineer, became Jayne's stepfather. Family moved to Dallas, Texas, where Jayne spent most of her childhood. Her mother was strict and pushed her to excel. She wanted Jayne to focus on academics. But Jayne had other dreams. He took voice and dance lessons, played the violin, and put on performances in front of her house. Even at a young age, she wanted to be a star. She also had a talent for languages at Highland Park High School. She studied Spanish and German. She was smart, but she didn't just want to be known for it. That she idolized Shirley Temple and wanted to be famous to get noticed. She entered beauty pageants and joined local theater productions. She told anyone who would listen that one day she would be the biggest star in Hollywood. At 17, her life took another turn. She met Paul Mansfield at a Christmas Eve party in 1949. The two fell in love fast on May 6, 1950. They got married. Jayne was already 3 months pregnant later that year on November 8th. She gave birth to her daughter, Jayne Marie Mansfield. Motherhood didn't slow her down. She and Paul enrolled in drama classes at Southern Methodist University, then moved to Austin to study at the University of Texas. Paul hoped marriage and a baby would change her ambitions, but Jayne only became more determined in 1952. Paul was sent to serve in the Korean War. Jayne stayed behind, raising their daughter while working and studying. In 1953, Jayne Mansfield moved back to Dallas and started studying acting under Baruch Lumet. He was the father of director Sidney Lumet and had founded the Dallas Institute of Performing Arts. He gave Jayne private lessons and treated her and Rip Torn like his own kids. He also helped her get her first screen test at Paramount in April 1954. That same year, Jayne, Paul, and their daughter, Jayne Marie, moved to Los Angeles. She took whatever job she could find to support her family. She sold popcorn at the Stanley Warner Theater, taught dance, sold candy at a movie theater, and worked as a photographer at Esther Williams's Trails restaurant. She also did part-time modeling at the Blue Book Model Agency. Acting was her real goal, and she never lost focus while studying at the University of Texas. At Austin, Jayne won several beauty contests, including Miss Photo Flash, Miss Magnesium Lamp, and Miss Fire Prevention Week. But not every title appealed to her. She turned down Miss Rope for Cheese because it didn't sound right. In 1957, she rejected Miss Prime Rib. For the same reason, even before Hollywood, she had started acting in local theater in Dallas. She performed with Paul in The Slaves of Demon Rum and 10 Nights in a Bar Room. She also acted in Anything Goes while at Camp Gordon, Georgia. When Paul left for military service, she landed her first significant stage role in Death of a Salesman on October 22, 1953. The production was LED by Lumet at the Knox Street Theater at UCLA. She entered the Miss California contest. She hit her marriage status and won the local round, but later withdrew. Breaking into Hollywood wasn't easy. Some advertisers thought her curves were a problem. She even lost a General Electric commercial because of it. In 1954, she auditioned at Paramount and Warner Brothers. At Paramount, she performed a scene from Joan of Arc for casting director Milton Lewis. He told her she was wasting her obvious talents and invited her back a week later. This time, she performed the piano scene from The 7-Year Itch. They weren't impressed and told her she needed to go blonde. Warner Brothers had the same reaction, but she kept pushing forward. That same year, she booked her first acting job in Lux Video Theater on CBS in 1950. The episode An Angel Went AWOL. She had a small role sitting at a piano and delivering a few lines. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it paid $300, which would be around $4,000. Today, the same time Playboy was becoming a sensation, Hugh Hefner had launched the magazine in December 1953, and early features on Jayne Marilyn Monroe. Betty Page and Anita Ekberg helped make it a success in February 1955. Jayne was named Playmate of the Month. Her appearance in the magazine boosted her career and increased Playboy's circulation. She later posed for the Playboy calendar, covering her breasts with her hands. Playboy featured her every February from 1955 to 1958 and again in 1960. Not everyone approved. In August 1956, Paul Mansfield filed for custody of their daughter. He claimed Jayne was an unfit mother because of her Playboy photos. Controversy didn't slow her down. In 1964, the magazine reprinted her 1955 pictorial. Playboy continued using her images in later issues, including the Playboy portfolio of sex stars in December 1965 and Centerfolds of the Century in January 2000. In Mansfield's journey to stardom started with a single role that changed everything. In 1955, she played Rita Marlowe in Will Success Spoil Rock? Hunter, a Broadway satire on Hollywood's obsession with fame play, ran for 444 performances, giving her the perfect stage to showcase her talent. She wasn't just another blonde bombshell. She had sharp comedic timing and a way of making fun of her own image while still being completely captivating. Critics loved her, and audiences couldn't get enough. Her performance caught the attention of 20th Century Fox, which signed her to a 6-year contract in 1956, the film adaptation of Will Success, Spoil Rock. Hunter followed in 1957, directed by Frank Tashlin. Mansfield returned as Rita, bringing the same mix of humor and self-parody that made the Broadway version a hit. The movie took direct aim at Hollywood's obsession with beauty and stardom, making it more than just another comedy. Mansfield knew exactly what she was doing. She played into her image while proving she was in on the joke. Fox even marketed her as Marilyn Monroe king size, setting her up as Monroe's direct competition. But Mansfield wasn't just a copy. She had her own style and a presence that made her impossible to ignore. Before Rock Hunter, she had already shown she could carry a film with The Girl Can't Help It. In 1956, also directed by Tashlin, this musical comedy was originally meant as a satire of rock and roll, but ended up being one of the most iconic showcases of the genre. The film featured some of the biggest names in music, including Little Richard Fatts, Domino Gene, Vincent, and the Platters. It wasn't just a movie. It became a time capsule of 1950s rock culture. Mansfield played Jerry Jordan, a reluctant starlet pushed into fame by her mobster boyfriend. It could have been just another dumb blonde role. She made Jerry more than that. She gave the character charm, wit, and a little bit of knowing sarcasm. The film was a massive hit, earning more than Gentlemen Prefer. Blonde's 1953, proving she could rival Monroe at the box office. One of the most famous moments in the film came early on. Mansfield walks down the street as men literally stop in their tracks to watch her. It became one of the most iconic scenes of her career, endlessly imitated in pop culture. By 1957, Mansfield was at her peak. That year, she won the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year, beating out Carol Baker and Natalie Wood. The award recognized her standout performances in The Girl Can't Help It and The Wayward Bus. It should have led to more serious roles, but Hollywood had already decided what kind of actress she was. She played into the blonde bombshell image for publicity, but it also trapped her. It wasn't just a pretty face. Mansfield had an IQ of 163 and spoke 5 languages, but the industry focused on her measurements. She wanted to prove she was more than that. The Wayward Bus, based on John Steinbeck's novel, gave her a rare chance to show her dramatic range. She played Camille Oakes, a burlesque dancer trying to escape her past. She toned down the over-the-top mannerisms and gave a performance filled with quiet vulnerability. One of the most powerful scenes in the film comes when another passenger finds an article about Camille in a tabloid. Instead of reacting with big gestures, Mansfield played it with restraint, letting the emotion build in her expression. Critics noticed, while Joan Collins was the film's technical lead, Mansfield was the one who stood out despite proving she could handle serious roles. Hollywood didn't take advantage of it after The Wayward Bus. She was pushed back into comedies that reinforced her public image instead of challenging it. Jayne Mansfield lived for the spotlight. She was bold, fearless, and willing to break every rule to stay famous. But sometimes that meant pushing too far. Her career was filled with controversy, from shocking Hollywood to legal trouble, to personal tragedies that played out in headlines. In 1963, she made history as the first mainstream American actress to appear nude in a sound film. Promises, Promises featured 3 topless scenes that lasted just over a minute. But the impact lasted much longer. Hollywood had followed strict censorship rules since the 1930s, and Mansfield's decision shattered those boundaries. By then, her career was already struggling. She had been a major star in the late 1950s with The Girl Can't Help. It will success spoil Rock Hunter, but her popularity was fading. Many believe she took the role to stay relevant. The controversy didn't stop at the film. Playboy published behind-the-scenes photos of Mansfield on set, including images of her exposing her breasts. The fallout was immediate. Hugh Hefner was charged with obscenity in June 1963. The trial ended in a mistrial, but the case showed just how divided the country was over nudity and morality. Meanwhile, the film was banned in several cities, but where it played, it made money. It proved Mansfield could still get attention, but critics were harsh. Roger Ebert later said, her decision to appear nude was a sign of desperation. Even though Promises, Promises was a financial success, it didn't revive her career. Instead, it made her a bigger target for controversy. That same year, her nightclub performances put her in legal trouble in Burlington, Vermont. She was arrested for indecent exposure. By then, she had moved away from Hollywood films and focused on live shows. These performances were designed to keep her sex symbol status alive. She sang, told jokes, and interacted with audiences while wearing revealing costumes. One of her most famous outfits was a gold mesh dress with sequins, covering only her nipples and pubic area. People started calling her Jayne Mansfield, and a few sequins audiences loved her shows, but not everyone was impressed. Critics called her performances vulgar and unprofessional, saying she relied more on shock than talent. Still, the scandal only made her more famous. She was making up to $23,000 per week, about $236,000 today. Mansfield didn't care what people thought. She kept touring. Knowing that controversy kept her name in the news by the mid-1960s, Mansfield's name was tied more to scandals than success. She had been one of Hollywood's biggest bombshells, often compared to Marilyn Monroe. But unlike Monroe, who balanced sex appeal with serious roles, Mansfield embraced the outrages. He lived for attention, no matter where it came from. And as her life became more chaotic, the scandals only got bigger. Jayne Mansfield's personal life was just as wild as her Hollywood career. She was married 3 times, and each relationship came with love scandal and heartbreak. Her first marriage started in 1950. She was just 17. Paul Mansfield, a public relations professional, seemed supportive at first, but as Jayne's dreams grew bigger, the marriage started falling apart. She moved to California to chase stardom. Paul accused her of infidelity. Their divorce in 1958 was ugly. He even tried to use her semi-nude Playboy photos as proof that she was an unfit mother. He wanted full custody of their daughter, Jane Marie. The court didn't buy his claims. That same year, Jayne married bodybuilder and actor Mickey Hargate to the public. They looked like the perfect Hollywood couple. They had 3 children together, Niklaus Jr., Zoltan, and Mariska, who would later become a famous actress, but behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. There were accusations of cheating on both sides. Jayne had an affair with Italian producer Enrico Bomba, and their marriage started falling apart. The divorce in 1964 turned into a battle. Jayne even accused Mickey of kidnapping one of their children to gain leverage over her financially. Not long after Jayne married director Matt Cimber, he promised to help her career, but their relationship turned toxic fast. He struggled with alcohol, had multiple affairs, and once told Cimber that the only man she had truly loved was an ex-Nelson Sardelli. By the time they separated in 1966, Jayne's career was in trouble. She had gone from Hollywood films to performing in cheap or less shows. Her personal life was even worse. She was in a dangerous relationship with her attorney, Sam Brody, and those around her started to worry through all of this. Jayne loved being a mother. She had 5 children. Jane Marie from her first marriage, 3, with Mickey and her youngest Antonio. From her marriage to Cimber, she once said that motherhood was her greatest joy in rare quiet moments. She even knitted clothes for them. But balancing fame and family wasn't easy. Paul Mansfield accused her of neglecting their daughter later in life. Others close to her said similar things. The kids grew up moving from place to place, surrounded by paparazzi, and caught in the middle of their mother's chaotic relationships. By the mid-1960s, things were spiraling. Jayne was drinking heavily and using diet pills and LSD. Her behavior became unpredictable. Some people even claim she let Sam Brody mistreat her eldest daughter. But despite everything, her children have always said she was a loving mother. Mariska Hargate has spoken about how her mother's energy and resilience shaped her own life, and came the tragedy that changed everything. In 1967, Jayne was in a car with Sam Brody, and 3 of her children when they crashed into the back of a truck. The impact killed Jayne instantly. Miraculously, all 3 children survived. They were left physically unharmed. The emotional scars would last forever. Jayne's love life didn't end with her 3 marriages. She was linked to Clint Eastwood, Peter O'Toole, Bobby Darin, and even Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. But one of the most shocking rumors was her alleged affair with President John F. Kennedy. She reportedly pursued him because she was jealous of Marilyn Monroe's relationship with him, with help from actor Peter Lawford. She arranged meetings with JFK in the early 1960s, unlike Monroe, who kept things quiet. Jayne bragged about it. She even taunted Marilyn about it at Hollywood parties. Some say JFK wasn't interested in her beyond a few encounters. Others believe there was more to the story. There were also rumors that she had been involved with Robert F. Kennedy and even Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. After Monroe's death in 1962, Jayne started to get paranoid. She told people she feared something similar could happen to her. Meanwhile, in 1966, she met Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Their connection sparked rumors, and when tragedy struck, many began to wonder if something darker had been at play. Mansfield was in San Francisco for a film festival when she met Levi. He was fascinated by her, and she seemed equally intrigued by him. Soon, photos of them together appeared in the media. People started calling her the High Priestess of Levy. Some believed it was all for publicity. Mansfield loved attention, and Levy was known for theatrics, but others weren't so sure. She called him a genius, and he thought she was a powerful figure. Their relationship remained mysterious, but one thing was certain: wherever they went, headlines followed. At the time, Mansfield was dating Sam Brody. Her lawyer and rumored fiancé, their relationship was turbulent. Brody was aggressive, and many believed he controlled her. Leva didn't like him. He warned Mansfield that Brody would bring harm. Then things took a darker turn. Leva allegedly placed a curse on Brody, saying that if Mansfield stayed with him, Brody would die within a year. She didn't listen whether she believed in the curse or not. She stayed by Brody's side. That was when the tragedies began. The first was a nightmare on November 23, 1966. Mansfield's 6-year-old son, Zoltan, was mauled by a lion at Jungleland, USA, an animal park in California. His injuries were so severe that he needed brain surgery. Some believe the curse had begun. Meanwhile, Brody started getting into car accidents over several months. He was involved in at least 6 crashes. Mansfield was often in the car with him, and each time the danger seemed to grow. People who once laughed at the idea of a curse started to wonder if something more sinister was happening. Then came the night of June 29th, 1967. The night started like any other. She had just finished a performance at Gus Stevens' Supper Club in Biloxi, Mississippi. From there, she was headed to New Orleans for a television appearance. Riding with her were her boyfriend, Sam Brody, her driver, Ronnie Harrison, and her 3 children, Mickey Jr. Zoltan and Mariska Hargate, who was only 3 years old. The children were asleep in the back seat as the 1966 Buick Electra 225 sped down U.S. Route 90. It was early morning, around 2:25 a.m., when the car neared Slidell, Louisiana. Up ahead, a semi-truck was slowing down. A thick cloud of fog had settled over the road. It wasn't just any fog. It came from pesticide being sprayed in the area. Visibility dropped, and before the driver could react, the Buick crashed straight into the back of the trailer. The impact was devastating. Car slid under the truck. Jayne Mansfield, Sam Brody, and Ronnie Harrison were killed instantly. Even Mansfield's Chihuahua, which had been in the front seat. Somehow, all 3 children in the back lived through the crash with only minor injuries. Hollywood was in shock. But this tragedy did more than make headlines. It changed auto safety forever. The accident led to the introduction of metal bars on the back of semi-trailers. These are now known as Mansfield bars. They prevent cars from sliding underneath trucks. The way hers did, her death forced the industry to rethink road safety. But as the news spread, so did a disturbing rumor. Many believed Mansfield had been decapitated in the crash. This myth likely started because of photos from the scene. Blonde hair could be seen scattered around the wreckage. People assumed the worst, but the truth was different. She had been wearing a wig that flew off in the impact. The official coroner's report stated that she died from severe head trauma. Her skull had been crushed, part of her cranium was torn away. But she was not decapitated. Even so, the rumor took on a life of its own, making its way into books and movies, including Crash 1996 for her children. The loss was something they carried with them forever. Mariska Hargrave, the youngest, grew up with a scar on her head from that night. the tragedy shaped her life in ways she would only fully understand. Years later, she became an actress, finding success in Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. She became an advocate for trauma survivors. The pain of losing her mother never went away, but she turned it into something meaningful. Jayne Mansfield wasn't just a Hollywood bombshell. She was a master of publicity, a fashion icon, and a woman whose legacy left a lasting mark on both pop culture and public safety. At the height of her fame, she was everywhere. Between September 1956 and May 1957, alone she appeared in around 2,500 newspaper photographs with over 122,000 lines of print dedicated to her. Even in an era filled with glamorous stars, her ability to command attention was unmatched. Every detail of her public image was carefully orchestrated, often with the help of her publicist James Byron. Whether it was a daring outfit, carefully planned wardrobe malfunction, or an unforgettable appearance at a star-studded event, Mansfield knew how to keep the cameras rolling. One of her most famous moments happened in April 1957 at a dinner party honoring Sophia Loren. Mansfield arrived in a plunging dress, leaned forward just as the cameras flashed, and instantly became the center of attention. Image of Loren casting a disapproving glance at Mansfield's cleavage became one of the most famous photos in Hollywood history. This wasn't just luck. She knew the power of a single moment, and she made sure the world never forgot her. But Mansfield wasn't just a tabloid sensation. She played a crucial role in shaping fashion trends, particularly when it came to bikinis. In the 1950s, bikinis were still seen as risque, something only the boldest women would wear alongside stars like Marilyn Monroe and Brigitte Bardot. Mansfield helped change that perception. She often wore bikinis in films, photo shoots, and live performances, turning them into symbols of confidence and glamour. One of her most iconic looks was a leopard print bikini, which became a signature piece during her stage shows. She also wasn't afraid to use bikinis as a publicity tool. In 1955, at a press event for the film Underwater, she wore a red bikini that was just a little too small when she dove into a pool. The top slipped off. The media frenzy that followed only boosted her fame. This kind of bold move kept her in the spotlight and helped cement bikinis as mainstream fashion at the 1960s. Bikinis were everywhere, becoming a symbol of liberation and modernity. Mansfield had played a key role in that transformation. There was also another side to Jayne Mansfield that few people truly understood. Beneath the dumb blonde persona was a woman with an IQ of 149. He was fluent in 5 languages: English, French, Spanish, German, and Italian. She learned the first 3 in high school and later picked up German and Italian. She was incredibly sharp, but Hollywood had little interest in promoting that side of her. Studios saw her as a sex symbol first and a thinker second. He was well aware of this when asked about it. She once said they're more interested in 40, 21, 35. Referencing her famous body measurements. He could have leaned into her intelligence, but she knew that playing the role of the bubbly blonde was what made her successful. Sometimes she even exaggerated the persona, knowing it was what audiences expected in interviews. She would shift between displaying her wit and leaning into the image that had made her a star. He was in control of her own narrative. Even when the world refused to see past her looks, Jayne Mansfield wasn't just a Hollywood starlet. She was a strategist, trendsetter, and a woman who left an impact far beyond the silver screen. Whether it was changing the way celebrities used publicity, shaping fashion trends, or influencing road safety laws, her legacy still lingers today.